It's true that this particular farm tractor was driven by the legendary A.B. Jenkins on the Bonneville Salt Flats. The record it set for tractors in 1935 would remain in effect for 81 years. But why, how, and how fast was it? That's the question we'll be answering today as we delve into the fascinating tale of the Allis-Chalmers Model U factory's special tractors from the 1930s. I must admit, I have a soft spot for antique tractors. In fact, I own more of them than old cars. That's why this story has always resonated with me and continues to captivate my imagination. Trust me, if you didn't know the backstory, you'll find this story fascinating. A.C. allis-Chalmers, one of the great industrial behemoths of the early 20th century, was incredibly diversified in its product line. It made steam engines, water turbines for hydroelectric dams, and even one of the first particle accelerators ever built as a contractor. However, the company's financial footing wasn't always rock solid. A.C. allis-Chalmers was good at a lot of things, but not great at anything. As a result, their myriad of products were never leaders in their respective segments, even though production volume was massive. Profit margins were consistently low until the middle of the 1920s, when the company appointed Harry Merritt to head its tractor division. Didn't have the necessary market share or recognition to sell enough volume to turn a profit. Supposedly, Merritt was brought in to basically shut down the entire division of the company. However, something interesting happened. Merritt redesigned the existing product, which helped. Then he landed a large contract to build machines for the United Tractor and Equipment Company of Chicago. This company was a consortium of former Fordson dealers who had nothing to sell when the Fordson brand closed in 1928. The machines that United wanted were fairly large for their time, capable of pulling 3 or 4 bottom plows and packing about 30 horsepower. Allis manufactured them according to the specifications provided, and the company promptly went out of business. By the way, United's chosen color was a vibrant shade of orange. Meanwhile, at the same time, whether it was the poppies or the fact that United's already suspiciously close shade of orange was more impactful than allis-Chalmers green, things continued to move forward. Despite the Model U's lack of success, many smaller farmers saw it as too large, and many larger farmers saw it as too small. Regardless, Merritt returned from his business trip to California claiming to have seen acres of wild poppies covering the terrain. The company then ditched its drab green paint and switched to the iconic Persian orange, which would become its calling card forever. They continued to manufacture the United Tractor under their own name, the Allis-Chalmers model. Merritt and Harvey Firestone are friends. When Merritt wanted Firestone to get a Model U tractor for the family farm, the homestead, they quickly started discussing the advantages of rubber tires on tractors, a concept that had never been considered before. Historically, tractors had been powered by large, cleated steel wheels and could only travel at a maximum speed of 5 mph, which was considered quite acceptable. However, when faced with muddy fields, these clunky machines could easily navigate the dirt roads surrounding farms. As the world was changing, a new paradigm was emerging. They began to pay more attention to work speed as they gained more land and larger tracks. In response, Firestone and Merritt came up with an idea. Firestone had a set of airplane tires sent to his farm and began testing them. The steel wheels looked as dated as they actually were. They started with tests at 70 psi and worked their way down to 12, which provided the best surface flotation and ability to work. They knew they were onto something. After refining the design by adding bar-like structures to the tires, the performance was a revelation. Not only did they allow for much higher work speeds, but fuel economy increased by 25%, and there was a 15% increase was tremendously improved. These men had undoubtedly found the way forward for agriculture. Word quickly spread and Goodyear was on the same page. Whether it was due to the discovery of the Firestone experiments or a collective awakening, the rubber tire revolution was well underway. Despite this, farmers were notoriously sluggish to adopt new technology, particularly during the Great Depression. Even with something as simple as tires, they were skeptical about the potential toxicity of the material, its durability in the face of hard work, and any other potential drawbacks. Ultimately, the farmers needed to be convinced of the benefits of this idea and their use of these tires. How could this be achieved? Beginning in 1932 with inflatable tie. To make the most of their influence, the Model U was now available with a fourth gear that could reach speeds of 10 to 15 miles per hour. Interestingly, this gear couldn't be used unless the buyer had rubber tires. This was back when tractors could only go 5 miles per hour at most, so the idea of doubling or tripling that speed was quite remarkable. To demonstrate the capabilities of their tractors, AC and Firestone began by pulling a 4-bottom plow at 5 miles per hour. In 1932, they began to demonstrate how the tractors could drive on public roads. One example was a Model U that traveled from Milwaukee to Chicago, pulling a trailer at an average of 17 miles per hour. Interestingly, the building where this demonstration was held was the same one that would later host indoor drag races. Here on the channel, we uncover that tractors could only reach speeds of 5 mph at full throttle. With the help of Allis-Chalmers, W.L.Z. Brown, and Merritt Harvey Firestone, they devised the idea of a high-speed tractor capable of reaching speeds of up to twice that. Unfortunately, the company's methods for creating this machine have been concealed or lost through the years. But we can speculate. Changing the transmission ratio and adding a fourth gear definitely helped, but in my opinion, it had to have been more than that to keep the tractor's stock appearance and avoid using any kind of elaborate modifications. Along with the taller ring and pinion, they probably installed an auxiliary transmission in the bell housing with an overdrive gear. It sounds crazy, but as someone who owns a 1940s tractor with an overdrive, it takes a tractor that normally runs at 15 mph and makes it run at 27 mph. All of this is neatly hidden inside the existing equipment. Whatever the case may be, what happened next stunned the American farmers. Allis-Chalmers appointed Frank Briscoe, a dirt track star and regular at the Indy 500, Barney Oldfield, the most American race car driver ever, even though he had been retired for over a decade, and A.B. Jenkins, the famed land speed racer, to represent them. Promote tractors, but it was to race them wheel to wheel. 3 specialty machines were built, using engines that were purportedly stock, but were probably hot-rodded to some extent. Most importantly, they elevated the 1932 Milwaukee to Chicago road trip concept to a new level. In June of 1933, at the Tri-Champ car race in Milwaukee, Allis-Chalmers made headlines when a farmer named Albert Schroeder pulled a 4-bottom plow at 5 mph in front of the packed grandstands. Schroeder then passed the wheel to Frank Briscoe, who ditched the plow. Briscoe then set a new world speed record on the dirt oval, traveling more than 35 mph, shocking the pack in the grandstand. By the middle of the summer, Oldfield would take over. Represented at state fairs across the country by August, Oldfield was mentioned in newspapers discussing his intention to displace Briscoe as the speed record holder. By the fall, he was prepared to do it, and he achieved an astonishing 64. During his comeback tour in 1932, 28% racing hero Barney Oldfield attempted to qualify for the Indy 500. However, he was too slow and quit. To keep the promotional fires burning in Allis-Chalmers' factory, a representative named Charlie Hill Road tripped one of the tractors at 45 mph on average from a Milwaukee plant to Omaha, Nebraska. It was a miracle of human endurance, and he endured the cold, miserable conditions on that open seat. By 1934, the show was not only back, but it was even better booked into fairs and races across the country, Allis-Chalmers Edition. Its driver lineup now includes the illustrious Lou Meyer, who brought a great deal of cachet as a racing superstar of his time. Meyer had won the Indy 500 multiple times. Up next, we have A.B. Jenkins, who set a new field speed record of 65. What did it look like to travel 45 miles on an open roadway in October of 1934? Instead of telling you, I'll show you. This is period footage from the day that A.B. Jenkins broke the 64-mile record. He was clearly busy, but as you can see, the tractor is barreling toward the camera from multiple angles. From front to back, you can see that the massive rear tires, which were not balanced at the time, were definitely giving the driver a handful. Don't forget about the chase vehicles. It's a high-stakes game when you imagine this scenario. The action is about to unfold, and if something goes wrong with Jenkins' tractor, he's falling off at 65 miles an hour, which is bad enough. But if he's hit the ground while being chased by the man in the chase car, it would be the worst possible outcome. The local officials were thrilled to have such a famous face in their town, and 1935 was a banner year for the promotion and allis-Chalmers tractor division. Realizing that the U's large size was the main reason for the tractor's slow sales, the company introduced the smaller WC, which would go on to sell nearly 200,000 units, the brand's greatest success to that point. In the factory, with rubber tires now, the displays of speed and racing continued with the same rugged model that had been introduced in 1933. In June, all this mayhem would reach its peak on the bottom of Salt Flats as they prepared to set a 24-hour endurance speed record in a new supercharged Duesenberg Model J. A.B. Jenkins, armed with his tractor, rode the machine more like a horse jockey than a farmer, getting out of the seat and doing the kind of tuck that motorcycle racers use. Pushing himself to his limits, he took the same model that had run 64 miles per hour and exceeded 67 miles per hour, running 67. It appears that Jenkins decided enough was enough after this experience at 877 at peak speed. He never again attempted, and if you pay close attention to the footage, you'll notice that the unsuspended tractor on its unbalanced tires is incredibly difficult to control at high speeds. It's incredible that neither the tires nor the driver A.B. Jenkins were injured. Jenkins went on to set a world record for driving a tractor for 24 hours in an average of 135 minutes in his Duesenberg. Interestingly, he broke his own solo endurance record multiple times, most notably in 1938, when he averaged 161 moments for 24 hours. This record remained until 1990. Unfortunately, Jenkins's barnstorming tractor racing summer took a turn for the worse at the Tennessee State Fair at November 1935. He collided with another racer at high speed, flipping his machine over. Although he only broke his ankle, the consequences could have been much worse. In October and November, he continued to race in Alabama and other southern locales. He amazed the last audiences to ever witness high-speed dirt track tractor racing in America. Firestone and Allis-Chalmers apparently decided it was enough and retired the tractors, selling them to customers who were confused about why they didn't pull as well as expected, but had a far higher top speed than anyone had imagined for a tractor. Nobody knows what happened to the 3 or more units after the promotion ended. Now, 81 years after A.B. Jenkins ran 67, the epilogue that made my tractor-loving heart sing. A builder and tractor enthusiast by the name of Jack Donahue, who had experience racing stock cars, had the brilliant idea of trying to beat A.B. Jenkins' record of 8.77 pence. Jack Donahue, 8 decades after A.B. Jenkins, set a record of 101 miles per hour at the East Coast Timing Association's standing mile meet in Wilmington, Ohio. If you don't believe me, here's the run with me calling it So Donahue's Racing in Time, only because we don't have a class dedicated to tractors here. The tractor was built with airplane tires, a modified flathead Vate engine, almost no suspense, and a roll cage, according to the specs of both organizations. Jenkins, in the late 1930s or early 1940s, drove a tractor at a speed of about 68 miles per hour across the Bonneville Salt Flats, which frightened him. Last time we were at the Ohio Mile, in September of last year, Jack Donahue reached 96 miles per hour. Now, with its A8 engine, modified body, and front suspension, the 8-cylinder is trying to break into triple digits for the first time ever. As it races down the track, you can hear the motor chewing on the big rear tires, bouncing up and down, and the survey says 101, 1, 1, 6, 9, 1. MLN Jack has completed it 101 times. When Jack Donahue finally achieved his goal of owning a 100th farm tractor in 1691, it was one of the most thrilling moments I've ever witnessed at a racetrack. A.B. Jenkins must have been smiling down from on high as he oversaw the construction of his tractor, which took years. Now, you know how racing tractors in the 1930s convinced farmers to use rubber tires on their tractors? This innovation changed American agriculture forever. At the time, tractors could only reach speeds of 30 miles per hour, which was insane for their day. When they reached speeds of nearly 70 miles per hour, it made headlines. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go test my own tractor in high gear and see if I can surpass its factory rating of 27 miles per hour. I'll betcha. Thanks for watching.